The envelope didn't look like trouble. Just thick ivory stock, the kind you feel before you even open it. It slid through my mail slot that Tuesday morning while I folded towels, still warm from the dryer. The air smelled like lavender. I remember that because it was the last ordinary moment before everything shattered. Connecticut Department of Health Vital Records Division. I thought it was a form I'd forgotten to sign, but my name was typed across the front. Claire Elaine Whitmore. My full name. The one I hadn't used since I left Stamford 3 years ago. I opened it with a butter knife. Inside was a death certificate. Official, stamped, blue ink, raised seal. Deceased, Claire Elaine Whitmore. Date of death, June 12, 2020. Cause, accidental drowning. Location, Tulum, Mexico. My hands went cold. The kind of cold that starts in your fingertips and climbs up like your body is trying to survive something too unreal to process. I wasn't dead, but someone had gone to a great deal of effort to make it official. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called the only person I still trusted, Maya Greer. She used to be my roommate at Parsons. Now she's a legal consultant in New Haven. Sharp, grounded, never rattled. She answered on the second ring. Maya, I just got a death certificate, I said. In my name. Silence. Then her breath shifted. Filed where? Hartford. It's dated June 2020. A longer pause. You need to come in, she said quietly. Now. I stared at the document again. Not just paperwork, a message, and I hadn't even seen who filed it yet. Mexico wasn't my idea. It was my father's. Russell Whitmore never yelled. He didn't need to. He had a way of saying things that sounded like options but settled like orders. You need space, Claire, he'd said back in May of 2020. You've been tense, unfocused. Take a sabbatical. Clear your head. Don't worry, we'll cover it. I should have known. I'd been freelancing in New York, trying to build my own design firm after walking away from Whitmore and Sons, the family real estate empire. They said I was wasting my degree. I said I was saving my name. The flight to Tulum was quiet. The hotel was elegant, minimal. Too perfect in hindsight. The first day felt like a breath. The second, my bank card failed. I called customer service. No issues on their end. Must be a local glitch. By day 3, my phone stopped working. The SIM card failed to register. No calls in, no calls out. The hotel manager suddenly couldn't find my reservation in the system, asked me politely to leave. By the time I found reliable Wi-Fi at a small cafe, I'd been off-grid for almost 7 days. No messages from my family, no missed calls. No, are you okay? Nothing. I sent emails, I texted Maya, I even messaged my sister Ivy. Just a dot and a question mark. I heard nothing back. And that's when something inside me folded, not shattered, just quietly bent inward, like a sati bridge, straining under weight. I booked a last-minute flight to Houston, then to a friend's apartment in Portland. I didn't tell anyone, not because I was hiding, but because somehow they'd already stopped looking. For 3 years, I told myself it was paranoia, miscommunication. Maybe they thought I needed more space. Maybe I'd made it too easy to be forgotten. But now, sitting in my kitchen, death certificate in hand, it wasn't a theory anymore. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me. And they started the moment I left the country. I met Caleb Dawson when I was 19. Back then, he was just the man in the gray suit who handled my grandmother's estate. His office still smelled the same, dried paper and peppermint oil. He looked up when I stepped inside. Claire. In the flesh, I said. He gestured to a chair. I took it. I placed the death certificate on his desk. He read it slowly, expression unreadable. I never believed it, he said finally. But I also never had proof otherwise. I'm here now, I said, and I need to know what they've taken. He opened a leather folder, worn at the edges. Inside were copies of my grandmother's trust documents. Elaine Margot Whitmore, founder of Whitmore and Sons, the only person in that family who ever saw me as something other than an accessory. She left you her personal estate, Caleb said. $6 million tax-optimized plus the Vermont property, but she added conditions. He paused. You must be legally alive at the time of transfer, and you must not be involved in any capacity with the family business. That sounds like her, I said. She thought being born a Whitmore was burden enough. He nodded, then he pulled another document from the folder. Clause 17, Dormant Status Provision. If the named beneficiary is presumed deceased or fails to respond to probate summons within 3 years of the grantor's death, the estate reverts to the residual Whitmore family trust. He slid it toward me. Deadline, May 27th, 2024. I did the math in my head. 92 days. That's how long I had left. If I didn't reverse the death certificate, restore my legal identity, and validate the inheritance before then, the entire estate would legally belong to my father and brother. They hadn't just erased me for revenge. They'd done it for access, and they'd almost gotten away with it. Caleb leaned back. I can help you file, Claire, but this won't be quiet. I don't need quiet, I said. I need daylight. The envelope this time was hand-delivered, cream-colored, embossed with the seal of the Connecticut Probate Court. It arrived just after 9 a.m. while I was adding sticky notes to a timeline Maya and I had drafted on my dining table the night before. Inside, petition for emergency conservatorship, filed by Russell Whitmore and Jacob Whitmore. Grounds: ongoing delusional behavior, paranoia, emotional instability, inability to manage, financial decisions. There was a note in my father's handwriting clipped to the front. Not personal, just factual. Like he was documenting a malfunction. We believe Claire is a danger to her own legacy. Her refusal to acknowledge reality is affecting the family's integrity. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry either. I just folded the document once, then again, and placed it on the table. Then I walked calmly to the kitchen sink and threw up. Not because I believed any of it, but because I recognized every word. They weren't inventing new lies. They were weaponizing old ones. Back in 2020 in Mexico, I spent 3 nights in a private clinic after a panic episode brought on by heat exhaustion and the loss of my passport. It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't psychosis. It was shock. And my family paid the bill quietly. Then never mentioned it again. Until now. Maya arrived 20 minutes later. She saw my face and didn't ask, just picked up the envelope, scanned the petition, and sat down. They're not trying to silence you, she said. They're trying to discredit you first. Make you look unstable so when you contest the death certificate, no one believes you. So what do? We don't defend your sanity, she said. We prove their fraud. That's when she made a call. To someone named Eli Rodriguez, digital forensics expert, former IRS auditor, now freelance, specializing in financial crime reconstruction. He met us 2 days later in a cramped records office in Bridgeport. Thin guy, early 40s, carried 3 laptops and a thermos of black coffee. Your family's good, Eli said, pulling up spreadsheets on his screen. But they're not invisible. He walked us through it. Shell companies registered in Delaware. Wire transfers routed through the Caymans. A $2.4 million loan tied to a forged passport application under my name. They borrowed against your grandmother's estate, he said. Before you were even declared dead. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. Maya leaned forward. Can you trace it? Eli nodded. Already did. There's a memo, buried in your brother's cloud storage, marked Phase 2, Discredit plus Invalidate. He turned the laptop toward me. The subject line read, If she resurfaces. I read it twice. My father's words. Cold. Clinical. If Claire attempts to return or contest, we proceed as discussed, maintain narrative consistency, reinforce medical documentation, avoid direct engagement. I felt my chest tighten, not panic, rage, the quiet kind that doesn't scream. It calculates. They didn't just try to erase me, I whispered. They built an empire out of my disappearance. Eli copied the files to 3 drives, each one labeled and sealed. One for Caleb, one for the Attorney General's office, one for insurance. We left the building without a word. Some truths are too big to say out loud the first time. Maya put a hand on my shoulder as we reached the parking lot. You, okay? I looked at the plastic case in my lap. Evidence, proof, ammunition. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm ready. She smiled. Not big, just enough. Good, because they're about to find out what it feels like to be erased. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Caleb filed the motion to revoke the death certificate. Maya drafted the counter-petition against the conservatorship. Eli compiled a forensic report so detailed it included timestamps, IP addresses, and metadata from documents they thought were buried. My father's lawyer called once, left a voicemail. Claire, this is David Renfield. I represent your family. We'd like to arrange a private mediation. Avoid unnecessary publicity. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. I deleted it. There was no understanding left to reach. The night before the first hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the blazer I'd designed when I was 24. Unfinished. I'd packed it for Mexico. Never wore it. Thought I'd lost it, but Maya had found it in a storage unit I'd forgotten about. Brought it to me without a word. I tried it on. It still fit. The next morning, I wore it to court. Not because I was trying to prove something, but because I wanted to remember who I was before they tried to bury me, and I wanted them to see her, too. The rain that morning was light, but steady enough to turn the courthouse steps into mirrors. I saw myself in each one. Black coat, hair tied back, eyes steady, and over it all, the unfinished blazer I'd once designed and never dared wear. The courtroom was on the 4th floor, Fairfield County Probate Court. A clerk glanced up as Maya and I entered, eyes widening, but didn't speak. Behind me, Caleb walked in silence. Beside me, Eli held a sealed evidence envelope. We weren't there for spectacle. We were there for correction. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, the temperature changed. Conversations hushed. A woman dropped her pen. Someone near the window whispered, "That's her." Phones rose like reflexes. The dead daughter had returned. At the courtroom door stood Russell Whitmore. Navy suit, stillness that bordered on contempt. Beside him, my brother Jacob paced like a man too tightly wound. My mother Charlotte was a step behind them. Pearl earrings, gray trench, not a single wrinkle out of place. She looked up as I approached. Didn't blink, didn't speak, just looked. And then she said, soft and cold, "Claire, not, you're alive, not, how, just my name, like it had never been missing." I passed them without pause and stepped into the courtroom. The clerk behind the desk froze halfway through filing papers. "I'm here to file a motion," I said, my voice clear, "to revoke a death certificate issued in error and to reinstate my legal identity." He stared, then slowly reached for the folder in front of him. Caleb spoke next. "We have documentation, ID, travel records, medical files, notarized letters from me, both myself and the attending physician from Vermont General." The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and square glasses, adjusted her seat. "This is unusual," she said. "But not unprecedented," Maya added smoothly. A beat. Then Russell stepped forward, tone measured. "This is clearly an emotional disruption, Your Honor. We, my wife and I, were told by professionals that Claire was compromised. She disappeared for years." "She disappeared," I said, cutting him off, "because she was erased." He didn't flinch. He just folded his hands behind his back. Like we were in a boardroom, not a courtroom. The judge looked from him to me. "To be clear," she said, "you are asserting that your death was falsely declared and that legal documents were submitted under fraudulent pretenses." "Yes, Your Honor," I said, "and I have the evidence." She paused. "This matter will require identity verification through official channels. 30 days. You will return then." The gavel fell. Motion recorded. Hearing continued. Room adjourned. I turned once more toward the people who called themselves my family. "You buried me on paper," I said softly, "and I'm here to show you how I dig." Then I walked out, the blazer held firm on my shoulders. And for the first time in years, I wasn't wearing anything borrowed. The second hearing was held 31 days later, long enough for the media to pick up the story, but not long enough for the rumors to settle. They called me the ghost heir, sometimes the daughter who returned, but they never called me by my full name. Inside the courtroom, the energy was different, not shocked, expectant. The air was tight, heavy with the sound of paper shuffling, heels clicking, and phones set to silent but always watching. I sat between Maya and Caleb, a folder of documents in my lap. Across from us, Russell looked bored. Jacob tapped his foot under the table like a boxer waiting for a bell. Charlotte stared straight ahead, palms folded, wedding band twisting slightly on her finger. In the back row, Ivy sat alone. The judge entered. Case number 20483. Whitmore versus Whitmore. Motion to reverse, declare death, and restore legal identity. Maya stood first, then Caleb, then me. We walked the court through everything. The forged death certificate, the fake psych evaluation written by a doctor who'd never met me, the shell companies, the wire transfers, the $2.4 million loan tied to a forged passport, and the memo marked Phase 2, discredit plus invalidate. Then it was Ivy's turn. She approached the witness stand, manila envelope clutched tight. Her voice shook just once. I found this in Dad's home office, she said. They weren't worried she was unstable. They were worried she'd come back. She handed the judge a printed email thread, one between my father and their legal consultant. Subject line, if she resurfaces. The judge read in silence, then looked back at me. Miss Whitmore, she said, do you wish to address the court? I stood slowly. I didn't die, I said. I disappeared because that felt safer than staying. I disappeared because silence was the only way I knew to survive a family that couldn't stand my voice. But I came back. Not for money, not for revenge, just for something simple. The truth, with my name on it. The room held still. Even Russell said nothing. Even Jacob, fists clenched, didn't speak. The judge nodded once. Motion granted, identity reinstated, all estate transfers suspended pending federal investigation. This court recognizes Claire Elaine Whitmore as legally alive and in full capacity. Gavel down. I didn't look at them when I left. They didn't reach for me either. But as I stepped through the courthouse doors into the afternoon light, Ivy followed. She didn't speak, just slipped a folded note into my hand, in her handwriting. I couldn't undo what they did, but I believe you were never gone. And for the first time, I felt the past break. Just slightly. Enough to walk forward without dragging it. 6 months later, I opened the doors to a place called the Whitmore Room. I didn't keep the name because I forgave them. I kept it so they'd never be able to pretend I didn't exist. It wasn't much. Just a converted walk-up in downtown New Haven. 3 rooms, 1 coffee machine, and a wall of corkboard where we let survivors post their truths on yellow sticky notes. Some were short. He said I imagined it. They told me I should be grateful. I believed them until now. Most ended with no punctuation. Just open wounds turned outward so they could finally breathe. The work we did wasn't glamorous. Legal aid, resource matching, quiet advocacy for people erased by systems that should have protected them. Not all of them had families like mine. Some had worse. But we shared one thing. We were all alive, and we weren't letting anyone write us out again. On the morning of our first workshop, a package arrived. No return address, wrapped in soft gray paper, hand-tied with a piece of ribbon I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside was a flat portfolio. No note, just a familiar sketch. My blazer, the one I designed at 24, folded away during the Mexico trip. Thought lost. The corners were worn, edges smudged with ink. But I knew it was mine. There was only one change. A handwritten line at the bottom in a script I hadn't seen in months. You were always meant to stand, Mom. I stared at the paper for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. Some wounds don't bleed. They just harden into quiet resolve. That night, I opened a new sketchbook, not for fashion. I drew out a blueprint, a second shelter, legal clinic on site, kitchen facing the street. I labeled each room not with numbers but with names. Clarity, shelter, anchor, rise. I wasn't going back. I wasn't building to remember them. I was building so no one else would have to disappear to survive. Ivy volunteers at the Whitmore Room now. She doesn't talk much about what happened, neither do I. Some things don't need to be said out loud. The fact that she shows up every Tuesday is enough. My father and brother are under federal investigation. I don't follow the case. I don't need to. Whatever happens to them isn't my story anymore. My mother sent one more package after the blazer. A check for $50,000. No note, no apology. just the amount, signed in her neat handwriting. I donated it to a legal fund for survivors of family fraud. She never wrote again. Some people ask me if I feel closure, if I've forgiven them, if I ever think about reaching out. The truth is, I don't need their forgiveness, and I don't owe them mine. I wasn't unstable, I was inconvenient, and they needed that gone. But here's what they didn't understand. You can't erase someone who refuses to disappear. You can forge documents, you can file motions, you can build empires on lies, but the truth has a way of surfacing. Quiet, persistent, unstoppable. And when it does, it doesn't just undo the damage, it redefines the story. So if you've ever been erased just to keep someone else comfortable, if you've ever been told you're too much, too difficult, too inconvenient to exist as you are, I see you. Your name matters, your truth matters, and no one, no matter how powerful, gets to write you out of your own life. If this story resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of people who refused to stay buried.